It's the second part of chapter 15, Monopoly, and we're going to finish things off here with looking at the graph for Monopoly and the differences between Monopoly and competition. So for Monopoly, is the sole producer, has a downward sloping demand curve, is a price maker, and reduces prices to increase sales. Competitive firm is the exact opposite, is one of many producers, has a horizontal demand curve, is a price taker, and can sell as much or as little at the same price. Now, profit maximization from Monopoly. This is the big graph for the Monopoly. And you can see the downward sloping demand curve, marginal revenue below that, and the cost curves remain the same, average total and marginal cost. Now, in terms of production, the Monopoly produces at where marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. The big difference, though, is that the price is going to be above marginal revenue and marginal cost. And we can say that the Monopoly is always going to produce a lower quantity than in competition. And here's where the competition intersection would be. Whoops. Oh, go back. Get my pen. There you go. The competition quantity is going to be right there. And the Monopoly is going to charge a higher price. And so the competitive price is going to be right here. This is the competitive arrangement because in competition, if you remember, marginal cost is equal to supply, and we've got demand. So Monopoly always produces at a higher price than competition and at a lower quantity than competition. Now for a competitive firm, price equals marginal cost. There we go. For a Monopoly, price exceeds marginal cost. So there you go. Price is greater than MR equal MC. Okay, for Monopoly profit. Profit is equal to total revenue minus total costs. TR minus TC, divide by Q. Profit is equal to price minus ATC times Q. And so this is going to be the rectangle and not a point. We'll see the profit in just a second. Here we go. Here's the production quantity. And there's the Monopoly profit. Right here. And the Monopoly profit will remain as long as price right there is greater than average total cost right here. And this next slide will emphasize that point. The monopolist will receive economic profits as long as price is greater than average total cost. So, given that this monopolist is going to be making that profit, by the way, it's always bad to buy from monopolists, but it's always good to work for a monopolist because their economic position will remain relatively constant. What can the public do about monopolies? They can respond to the problem of monopoly in one of four ways. One, they can make monopolized industries more competitive through antitrust laws that try to break up monopolies. Two, they can regulate the behavior of monopolies through regulatory agencies such as the Federal Communications Commission or the Public Utilities Commission. Three, they can turn some private monopolies into public enterprises. They can nationalize the industry. Many countries around the world have done that. Saudi Arabia has nationalized the oil industry, so it's entirely owned by the country. So has Venezuela. So has Mexico. We've nationalized our post office, and so we can do that. Or we can do nothing at all and let something known as creative destruction take place, whereby firms will seek to chip away at the monopolist's profits by producing something different that serves the same use. Kodak had a monopoly over cameras for a very, very long time back in the 60s and 70s. Then Polaroid came around and video cameras came around, and those were new products, but they effectively ate away at Kodak's monopoly. Okay, next slide. 2 important antitrust laws that have sought to make monopolized industries more competitive. One is the Sherman Antitrust Act that broke up the Standard Oil monopoly back in the early 1900s, reduced the market power of large and powerful trusts of that time period. And number 2, the Clayton Act strengthened the government's powers and authorized private lawsuits. So individuals can sue a monopoly. Netscape sued Microsoft over unauthorized use of its search engine, Internet Explorer. Many other antitrust acts have been passed in order for the government and private businesses to sue monopolies. Your book, I'm sure, has some other examples. Now, getting back to the regulating the behavior, trying to set the price, what the government tries to do is to set a price that will cover the average total cost so that they could just make the rate of return. That's nice, but the question is, what are those costs and who determines it? The government or the monopoly? And this is a big, big question because it is in the monopolist's best interest to raise those costs or at least report those costs as high as possible, and the government to lower those costs as much as possible. Okay, our final issue, price discrimination. Price discrimination is the practice of selling the same good at different prices to different customers, even though the costs for producing for the two customers are the same. In order to do this, the firm must have market power. And firms try to practice price discrimination so that they can gain more profit at the behest of consumers. Examples are, and there's lots of examples, if a firm has some degree of market power, movie tickets, matinee versus evening prices, kama-aina rates. All of us in Hawaii are familiar with this. Sell one price to locals and another price to outsiders. Financial aid for students is a good example, and textbook prices is another excellent example. People around the world will pay different prices for the same textbook than folks in America will. And you guys who have bought textbooks are very, very familiar with that. Your textbook is available electronically for $80, and that's a much, much better situation than paying God knows what the price is, $150 to $160 at your local bookstore. Now, price discrimination, in order to important effects, it can increase the monopolist's profits. It can reduce deadweight loss. So somebody gets the money, not the consumer certainly, but the monopolist. Now, in order to price discriminate, the firm must be able to separate the customers on the basis of willingness to pay. So you've got to separate who are the high buyers and who are the low buyers. And you've got to prevent the customers from reselling the product. So somebody who has a matinee price can't resell it to somebody who's paying an evening price. Internet sales are very, very good at this. Amazon and all the internet resellers will oftentimes get information from their consumers so they can set different prices to those consumers without the other person knowing about what different prices are out there. So price discrimination is very prevalent, and it's a way for the firm with some market power, i.e. a monopolist, to gain even more profit at the expense of consumers. Alrighty, I think this finishes off monopoly. Thank you very much. And our next chapter will be oligopoly. Or maybe it's monopolistic competition. Ah, well.